that between the margin of the white pulp and the red pulp, blood leaves the vessels. And so then within the red pulp, it has to re-enter these venous sinuses that are going to lead into central veins, or splenic veins that return the blood back to the body. Okay. So cells, including red blood cells and white blood cells, somewhere between the junction of the white pulp and the red pulp, they leave the circulation. And then these red blood cells have to squeeze back in through the lining of the venous sinuses to re-enter the circulation of the body. Okay. We'll come back to that concept. So this is called an open circulation. So here we see central arteries. This white area is the white pulp. Okay? And then all of this tissue here, including these little venous sinuses, make up the red pulp. The red pulp is made up of these sinuses and the tissue, the cells between them, which are called red pulp. Or they're called cords, splenic cords or Milross cords. So the red pulp consists of these sinuses and splenic cords. When we talked about the blood, we said that sometimes as a cell ages, a red blood cell ages, as it becomes senescent, it's less flexible. Flexibility is important because it's going to allow these cells that have left the circulation to squeeze through the lining of these venous sinuses and re-enter the circulation. If the cell is old, senescent, it will get stuck within this open circulation as it tries to re-enter the venous sinuses. In which case a macrophage will come along within that red pulp and grab it, remove it from circulation. Remember we talked about that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's where this occurs here. Okay, as the cells are trying to re-enter the circulation, they can get removed. Now, because all of the elements of the blood leave the bloodstream to enter into the red pulp, okay, prior to then re-entering the circulation, the spleen is a very, very vascular organ. Okay? And so if it ruptures as a result of trauma, you're going to begin to bleed into the abdominal cavity. And in fact, you can exsanguinate if you don't get medical attention. How does this typically happen? Well, let's suppose you're in a motor vehicle accident. Okay? And you're the driver. Okay? And you get into a head-on collision where your chest cage comes into contact forcibly with the steering wheel. You can break some ribs. And the fractured end of one of those ribs can puncture the spleen. And then you can start bleeding. So that by the time you reach the hospital, you might be hypotensive. You may be in hemorrhagic shock. That's one of those cases where a person comes in hemorrhagic shock and you don't see any blood on the floor. It's all on the inside. Not many times it's on the floor. You know, they have other injuries. But that's a case where someone can exsanguinate internally.
When someone's snowboarding and they're having and they brought in a helicopter.
Right. It happens. Right. Okay. So again, the lymphocyte, like these other lymphatic organs, contain immune cells, B cells and T cells, as well as macrophages. And the purpose there is to destroy blood-borne pathogens. Okay? This happens within the white pulp. Okay, so any pathogen that's being carried by the bloodstream typically exits the bloodstream near the edge of the white pulp, where it begins to meet the red pulp. And because the white pulp is made up of lymphocytes and macrophages, then that foreign material comes into contact with the macrophages, which then process the foreign agent and present it to the lymphocytes to generate an immune response. Okay? Now, So the immune function is carried out within the white pulp. Within the red pulp, okay, this is where all of those aged and infected red blood cells, as well as platelets, are removed. That's how we get rid of them. Okay? And in fact, a lot of our platelets are stored in the spleen. So if you were to remove someone's spleen, you would see a significant drop in their platelet count. Another important role of the spleen is hematopoiesis. I don't know if you remember this, but before we're born, just a little embryo or a fetus, red blood cell production takes place in the liver and spleen. But as we near birth, that transitions to red marrow within bones. Well, if during life, at some point, our marrow quits functioning, the spleen still has the capacity to resume function of blood production. Okay, we call that secondary hematopoiesis. Secondary hematopoiesis. Patients who undergo secondary hematopoiesis, their bone marrow becomes inefficient for one reason or another. Their spleen becomes very large as it ramps up production of red blood cells. Now what's interesting is when your spleen makes red blood cells, all of a sudden your percentage of hemoglobin F, fetal hemoglobin, increases. Okay? Well, because it's functioning like it did in utero. All right, let's take a 5-minute break now. That was a lot of stuff we talked about. What am I demonstrating here? If I do this, did you see that? What happened?
Your something to do with the air resistance. Yeah.
Physics. When an ice skater spins, what do they do to spin faster?
They pull in.
They pull in.
They pull in. I saw that on the ice skating movie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Now, I
Like,
always confuse centrifugal and centripetal force. It's one of those two.
I've
Because I know
never,
when you go on those Disney rides,
I've never
like
heard
if you
of
leave your stuff at the
centripetal.
bottom, it won't go anywhere. And that's due to some type of force or something. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, centripetal.
Yeah.
Spins all over.
Because
Yeah.
I told my band director, I was like, my stuff is gonna fall. He's like, no, it's not. We went upside down and everything. My stuff stayed
Yeah.
right there.
Do you remember there was a rod called the rotor where it goes real fast and you're pinned against the wall and the floor drops out?
Oh, well now it's like, it was the Gravitron and now it's called something different, but it's, yeah, the same kind
Yeah, so many.
See, I don't like
people
those
go
rides
around.
though. They make me nauseated.
of. Oh yeah. When
Yeah.
I was little, for some reason, like, it didn't bother me, but as I got older, the spinning, like, I could ride the teacups at Disney World and be sick as a dog, but I'll go on any roller coaster you want.
I love roller coasters, yeah. Don't give me those spinning rods. Me too.
That's what happened at our pre-K. Like we had like one that was like.
Oh my God, yeah.
Remember that? Yeah. There would be kids like
We would
sitting
be
next to
going
me throwing
like
up.
Well, there's always that little kid, that guy who wants to spin a cup faster
That
and
was
faster.
us. That was us.
You know.
Yeah, like, that would be my kid. I'd be like, oh.
So I went to my friend's house.
Oh.
I went to my friend's house. I didn't get home until 2:20 and my curfew was 2 a.m. And that's why I'm like so tired today.
So,
'Cause I
have any
fell
plans
asleep.
this weekend?
This I do, and this is just, my wife is going to take my mom dress shopping for my son's wedding.
Aww.
So it's good because my dad has got Alzheimer's.
Right.
It'll give me a chance to then kind of babysit for him, and I'll probably take him somewhere. We'll probably do something.
Cool. So he lives at home, or does he
He
live?
lives at home. He lives at home. You know, he can walk, although he's got some difficulties. He doesn't walk as well as he used to. But his memory's really bad,
Yeah.
and it can present for some amusing situations.
Your nose looks
We had a guy one time,
he
we were going out, I was
tissue
going out to eat
commercial.
with him.
And your nose looks like red.
He used to be a
Hey,
senior
I'm sick
partner in a
every day
CPA
because I
firm.
have allergies.
Your dad?
Yeah, he did a lot of things, but that was one of the things he got up. And then he took retirement and he actually went to law school and became an attorney.
Wow.
So in his day, he was really bright.
Yeah.
But his firm had to dismiss somebody for sexual harassment, one of the partners. In fact, he'd gotten one of the secretaries pregnant.
Oh, wow.
So it was a big kind of stink at the time.
Can't hide that.
So we're at the Pepper Mill, and this particular ex-partner
Celestone to help with
from, you know, 10, 15, no, more than that, probably 20 years ago, comes in with his wife. And my dad had just been to the company's, every year they have a big Christmas party at one of the major hotels. It's a big deal. And so he sees this guy, what do you call him, Mr. Hall. So he sees Tom Hall, and he says, my mom introduces him, she says, oh, this is one of your ex-partners, this is one of the people from my dad says, oh, hi. He says, why didn't you come to the party?
It makes you feel better.
And he would not have been invited to the party because there was a lawsuit. They had to
Yeah,
get
he
rid
was
of
like
him.
fired.
And so he's telling the guy, oh, you need to come to the party and all that. And it was an embarrassment because he was saying all this in front of the wife, and the wife was aware that he had had this affair with the secretary. And
Oh, yeah. It could have been worse.
it was at a stage of his dementia where if you didn't talk to him enough, if you were just being introduced, you may not know that he's demented.
Right.
And he doesn't remember anything. So she kind of thought that he was trying
But I
to
see,
stir the pot, I guess. And he just didn't remember that the guy had the sexual, you know, I don't know.
It could have been worse.
Yeah.
It could have been worse. Yeah, my aunt was diagnosed with Alzheimer's probably like 2 years ago now, and every holiday when I see her, like it seems like she's kind of going downhill a little fast. She forgets to eat, and like my uncle retired. He was approaching that age anyway, but he retired a little earlier than he probably would have to like stay home and take care of her. And he's kind of in denial. Like when he first retired, he would like go hunting for a few days at a time, and then my other aunt and uncle, like who lived up the street, would realize she was home alone, and like, you know, sometimes she's coherent, sometimes she's not. They were worried about her like running down the house or not eating,
Right.
like just
Oh, my
forgetting
dad's
to
appetite
eat.
is nothing like it used to be.
Oh, she's like this. I mean,
Now, one time we were celebrating a birthday of my dad. We went to, it's a fancy restaurant, Austin's.
I love Austin.
And so we're eating, and my dad thought he had put a handkerchief in his back pocket. So he sneezed, and he goes to pull out the handkerchief and blow his nose, and it's clear that he had gone into the wrong drawer, and it was one of my mom's bras. And he's doing it, and as waiters and stuff, and he said, what is this? You know, and he doesn't know the difference, okay? He just knows that it's not like his typical handkerchief.
Yeah.
And so those kind of episodes are kind of amusing, but so,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes it's
You
a little
have-
funny, but
Yeah.
My grandpa had Alzheimer's, and they would hide the keys from him. And I don't know, like one day he found the car keys and drove to Walmart. They're like, where's
If I wasn't the only
They
child.
didn't know where.
oh, my dad's wandering into the neighborhood in the middle of the night.
That's what was scary.
Yeah, they've had to put locks on all the doors.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, my grandma lives with us. We have to lock all the doors.
Right.
We have to get a key to get out
It's
the
like
house.
they revert back to toddlerhood.
Right.
It like rained a little bit, and I was in shorts, so I was like.
But anyway, I look forward to it. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
It'll be, you know, 'cause of all of my, now because I see him on a weekly basis, I try every weekend to go see him. Of all my siblings, I'm the only one he recognizes. Like he if I mention like my brother Alan or Jimmy or somebody else, he will say, well, who's that? You know, you have to go through the whole story.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but there are certain code words, like one of my sister-in-laws, I call her name is Janice, I call her the crier, and if I use the term she cried, because she cries a lot, if I use the term cry, he'll know immediately who it is.
That's funny.
Or one of my nephews lives with them. And so I'll mention Holden, and he says, well, who's that? And I'll say, the boarder. And if I say the boarder, he'll know who that is.
Oh,
So he's got little code names that he seems to remember people by.
yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to watch the evolution. But I feel bad for him because he's nowhere like the person he used to be.
Right.
He gets a little bit agitated. He does the sundowning, where if it gets dark, he starts to lose it a little bit more. So it'll give my mom a break.
Yeah,
I don't know how she does it.
really.
Because you have to constantly,
Yeah.
if you say anything, you have to constantly give him a frame of reference. You'll say, well, who's that? What happened there? And you'll have to constantly kind of reorient him. It gets tedious.
Yeah, but it's nice that she's,
Oh, she's very
there.
patient.
Yeah.
She's very patient. I don't know if I would have that same patience.
I read a poem a few days ago. It was called the Alzheimer's poem, and it's basically just like it's written by someone with Alzheimer's to like their loved one, basically saying like just remember who I am and just be there for me even though I don't remember you, and
Right.
it was very nice.
How do they die eventually?
Well, eventually they develop apraxia. Apraxia is, for instance, they can develop a gait apraxia where they forget how to walk. Like I noticed the other day in getting into the car, my dad was right outside, and he was trying to figure out, do I put this leg in or this leg in? So they eventually lose skills. Like he can't tie his own shoes anymore. Okay? You forget how to do those things. And eventually, in terms of things like walking, you become more sedentary and in fact bedbound. You become less communicative over time. You may start to develop an aphasia. And so ultimately they become bedbound and they develop those problems associated with being non-ambulatory.
Do they forget how to breathe?
Not so much they forget how to breathe, but they're at risk for aspiration, they're at risk for decubitus ulcers. As a result, they become septic more easily, they develop pneumonia. So it's just, the more non-ambulatory you become in life, the closer you are to death. So always, keep walking, keep doing things, remain active as much as possible. Because the loss of the ability to ambulate puts you one step closer to the grave. Okay.